It's October, the end of the dry season in the heart of South America. Oppressive clouds build up day after day. But no rain falls. The land is parched, and this rhea, a South American ostrich, is searching for seeds and grasses. The giant anteater roams in search of ants and termites across this low-lying savanna in southwestern Brazil. A vast floodplain, almost the size of France, once an ancient sea. This is the Pantanal. It means marshy prairie. During the dry season, life is concentrated around the permanent waterways. Water hyacinth, known locally as aguapé, and other water plants shelter masses of fish. Cormorants are commonly found here, even though it is over 800 miles from the sea. A striated heron. The anhinga catches fish by stabbing them with its dagger-like beak. If this hasn't killed it, the anhinga will pound the fish on a log or a branch. Then it tosses the fish into the air and catches it in its beak and swallows it head first. As the sun's rays pierce the river canopy, the heat becomes intense. The cormorant spends much of its time swimming and fishing underwater. During the heat of the day, it emerges from the river to dry its waterlogged feathers and to preen them. In places, the river widens to create quiet backwaters filled with luxuriant vegetation. These provide a haven for many of the Pantanal's aquatic inhabitants. This is a yellow-throated caiman, known to Brazilians as a jacaré, and one of the major predators of the Pantanal. It feeds almost exclusively on fish. It can't stay in the water too long, as the water will rot its surprisingly sensitive skin, so it makes for the bank to bask in the sun. Being a reptile, it needs the sun, both for the ultraviolet rays which keep its hide in good condition, and for warmth to raise its body temperature. Sometimes rarer creatures are found in these quiet backwaters. A tapir, a true relic of ancient times and one of the oldest living species on the earth today. It weighs about 500 pounds and is related to the rhinoceros and zebra. It grazes on vegetation above or below the water. Its prehensile snout is extremely sensitive and acts as an extra limb, which it uses to remove shoots and leaves that it can't reach with its teeth. A storm gathers, the first of the rainy season. The atmosphere is changing. Disturbed by the thunder, the tapir heads for the forest and shelter. The rains start in late October and become more frequent as the months go by. It pours down in torrents, as much as 2 inches in an hour. The rivers swell, their character changing. Fish, unable to see clearly in the muddy water, become easy prey for the caiman. As the rainy season progresses, the character of the Pantanal changes. The rivers overflow their banks. Everywhere there are pools of water. The Pantanal becomes a marsh, living up to its name. New vegetation springs up from the seeds which have lain dormant throughout the dry season. The fish move into these rich new feeding grounds, and the caiman follow. Other reptiles leave the rivers too. This yellow anaconda, also known as the water boa, is about 12 feet long and moves effortlessly through the water. Like the caiman, fish form the major part of its diet. During the dry season, the anaconda is confined to the permanent waterways. As the land becomes flooded, it will move considerable distances away from these waterways in search of food. But it's never found far from water and usually hunts alone. The rains continue falling over the Pantanal, and wherever the conditions are right, the frogs begin to breed. The males call at night, staking out their territory and attracting females. The rains also bring out the apple snails. They're called apple snails because they can grow to the same size and shape as apples. During the dry season, they have lain dormant in the ground where they buried themselves when the previous year's flood dried up. They emerge now, mate, and lay their eggs. The female climbs up a plant stem, the only time in her life when she will voluntarily leave the water. She climbs until she is far enough above the water for her eggs to be safe from the rising flood. She secretes two egg-like blobs of sticky mucus up the groove in her foot. These are driven up against gravity by her contracting the muscles on either side of the groove. The first egg is now carried up the same groove. Each egg is slightly pink because of its high albumin content. A sticky, protein-based mucus protects it from drying out in the heat and helps to glue the eggs together to form a cluster. They appear at about 30-second intervals, and the female will lay between 100 and 150 eggs. She deposits the eggs so that each fits into a neat and stable geometric pattern, ensuring that the cluster will hold together while the baby snails are developing. When the albumin in the eggs is used up, the eggshells become hard. When she's finished laying her eggs, she secretes further white blobs of mucus which secure the cluster to the plant stem. She then withdraws her foot and drops back into the water. Morning. The water level is still rising. Over the past few months, rain has fallen over the Bolivian foothills and surrounding high ground which borders the Pantanal. These waters pour into the main river of the Pantanal, the River Paraguay, which bursts its banks and floods the surrounding land. Yet again, the Pantanal changes character as these new floodwaters flow across the land, covering an enormous area. This moving water displaces many of the inhabitants of the Pantanal. The praying mantis takes refuge from the still rising floodwaters. Small frogs do their best to hang on to lily pads to avoid being swept away. An astonishing variety of aquatic plants flourishes in the flood. This freshwater turtle is in search of food. It lives mainly on apple snails, which feed on the vegetation. It has to breathe air, and so rises to the surface of the water, spending as little time there as possible before continuing its search for food. It finds an apple snail. This caiman lizard is also looking for snails and disturbs the turtle. It's an excellent swimmer, spending most of the day in the water, and eats mainly snails. It's called a caiman lizard because of its resemblance to the South American crocodile, the caiman, and can grow to 6 feet in length. Although at home in the water, this giant anteater has struggled a long way through the floods and tangled vegetation and is exhausted. It makes for a place to rest. When the rising waters have covered most of the land, small islands of raised ground remain. These islands are known as capão, and they soon become refuges for animals displaced by the flood. The exhausted anteater finds a safe place to rest at the base of the giant fig tree. It uses its powerful tail to lash out at would-be attackers, and to protect itself when resting, covers itself with its tail. It has dense fur and leathery eyelids to protect it from ant bites. This giant fig tree is growing on the capão and provides food and shelter for these howler monkeys, which have also been displaced by the flood. They will remain here on the capão until the floodwaters subside. As the flood continues to rise, the vegetation flourishes. Marsh deer, which have spent the dry season near the permanent water, now move in to feed on the lush new grazing. These deer are superbly adapted to living in the marsh and are the largest deer in South America. They have specially evolved feet. Between their toes, they have a membrane, a sort of webbing, which helps to spread their weight and enables them to move securely in the slippery conditions. They are always on the alert for predators. This jaguar does not appear to be particularly interested in the female. She snorts to warm her baby. It panics. The mother also panics. The baby gets out of its depth and has to swim. The baby reaches shallow water and escapes. Frustrated, the jaguar moves on. The mother rejoins her baby. The jaguar is the largest predator in the Pantanal and is entirely at home in water. He moves on through his territory. It is mid-March. The floods are at their peak and the Pantanal is at its most beautiful. In April, the flood starts to recede, and the floating vegetation is stranded in the receding waters. As the water continues to recede, the snail kites arrive from their breeding grounds in Argentina to feed on the apple snails. Since the snails live at the bottom of the channels, the drop in water level makes them easily accessible. At this time of the year, they become an important source of food for many of the animals and birds. This female is competing with the male for the best perch from which to hunt snails. He chases her away. Unlike many birds where male and female share territories, this rivalry is normal between snail kites. She is driven off. The male continues his search for snails. Not every attempt is successful. He returns to the disputed perch. These perches form a very important part of his territory. They provide the best points of vantage from which to hunt. A successful catch. He returns to his perch with the snail. He uses his uniquely adapted sickle-shaped beak to cut the muscle which attaches the snail to its shell. After a brief struggle, he extracts the snail and then drops the shell. The snail kite is not the only species dependent upon snails. The limpkin, having first pummeled the snail with its beak, now uses the beak as forceps to extract the snail. Yet another bird in search of snails, the Plumbeus ibis. It uses its beak as a probe to find snails, which it then swallows, shell and all. Six weeks after having been laid, the young snails have formed inside the egg cluster. As the embryos develop, the albumin level drops and the cluster changes colour from pink to greyish-white. Inside, the young snails increase in size and their weight breaks down the individual compartments. They slip to the bottom of the egg cluster. Soon the weight of the young snails and their fluid is enough to rupture the cluster. Being water snails, the embryos must develop in a liquid environment. Once the cluster ruptures, this liquid is released. The young snails drop into the water below. They have soft, translucent shells which harden on contact with water. Apple snails are not only important as a source of food in the Pantanal, by voraciously eating the vegetation, they help to keep the waterways clear. It is June, and the flood continues to subside. The land is drying out and channels begin to appear as the water drains into them. The fish, which had spread out into the floodplains when the rivers overflowed, now move back into the channels. As the water level diminishes, the fish become concentrated in the channels and are easy prey for the many wading birds which gather here to feed. These birds arrive in great numbers, and many species, such as the roseate spoonbill, snowy egret and great egret, take advantage of the abundance of food to gorge themselves. The spoonbills sweep their beaks back and forth, filtering crustaceans from the water. The paler birds are juveniles. This capybara is marking a scent trail, using the gland on its nose. It uses this trail to find its way back to good grazing. The capybara is the largest of the rodents, and a big male can be as much as 52 inches long and weigh 120 pounds. In the wild, they can live to 10 years old. Capybaras live in groups of up to 20 and are excellent swimmers. Their feet are webbed, and their store of body fat gives them almost neutral buoyancy. This old capybara is the dominant male of the group. The others keep out of his way. The capybara has large incisors which can inflict savage wounds. They live in family groups and will sometimes fight among themselves. Capybaras seldom wander far from permanent water. Indeed, water is vital for the capybara because if its skin becomes too dry, it soon becomes ulcerated. When the flood is at its peak, capybaras are concentrated on high ground. When the flood recedes, they will disperse throughout the Pantanal. In July, the flood continues to decline, and the vazantes, or water channels, become well defined to form a vast network. As the water drains away, pools of water remain isolated from the main system. Shoals of fish are trapped in these pools, with no escape. Woodstorks and other wading birds arrive now to make the most of the available feast. They mass together and herd the fish. The egrets encircle the feeding mass of storks. And catch fish as they try to escape. The woodstorks fish with their bills open. It is at this time of the year that many birds converge on the Pantanal in order to feed and breed. Woodstorks carry food back to the breeding colony, which may be as much as 20 miles away. The Pantanal is one of the great wetlands in the world, supporting many thousands of birds. This colony alone has about 20,000 pairs of birds. Woodstorks are the dominant species, but herons, egrets and spoonbills nest here as well, seeking safety in numbers. A young woodstork. Both adult woodstorks regurgitate food for their young. There are so many birds in this area that sometimes their droppings kill the vegetation, as with this tree. An egret's nest. The chicks are encouraging the parent bird to regurgitate the fish carried in its crop by pecking at the upper part of the bill. The chicks are old enough to be mobile, but can't fly yet. The roseate spoonbill feeds its young in a different way. The young spoonbill takes small crustaceans and aquatic insects from inside the parent's beak. This young egret has fallen out of its nest and becomes an easy meal for an opportunist like the crested caracara. Young birds must be fully fledged by the end of August, when the floodwaters, together with their food supply, will have dried up completely. Those that hatch late will not survive. The flood has almost vanished and leaves only diminishing pools. Yellow-throated caiman are here, basking in the sun. They, like the birds, have concentrated at these pools in order to feed on the fish which have been stranded by the receding waters. And the fish are unable to escape. Fish and caiman are not the only inhabitants of these pools. A freshwater crab, this young caiman is about 3 years old and 6 feet in length. He has been hunting in the territory of another, larger caiman and is in great danger. The big caiman will not hesitate to kill the smaller one if he encroaches on his territory. The smaller caiman goes on eating, but nervously. he decides to take his meal elsewhere. This caiman is about 12 feet long and weighs over 300 pounds. He's probably over 50 years old. All other caiman give way to him. His teeth have penetrated his nostrils. They continue to grow throughout his life. This caiman leaves the water to bask in the sun. But is in for a surprise. This heliconid butterfly is trying to drink the saline solution from the caiman's eye. The butterfly searches for another caiman. It inserts its proboscis into the corner of the caiman's eye and drinks. The butterfly is very persistent. Finally, the caiman is driven into the undergrowth by a butterfly. It's September, and the flood has gone, leaving a narrow channel threading its way through the parched landscape. Only the deeper depressions still contain water. The fish are trapped in these watery outposts. As it gets hotter, they will die in their thousands from lack of oxygen, providing easy pickings for the wading birds and carrion feeders which congregate here. The wading birds gorge themselves on both dying and dead fish. The carrion feeders must wait for the fish to be deposited at the water's edge. There are dead and dying fish everywhere. This caracara is so sated that it doesn't object when a second bird steals its fish. The heat is so intense, a cormorant cools itself by fluttering its throat. The jabiru stork, the largest stork in South America. It is about 5 feet tall. Its red neck can be expanded as a warning when angry or upset. The skin on its neck is filled with small veins which help the bird keep cool. Unlike the wood storks, it does not breed in colonies, but builds an enormous solitary nest which is reused year after year and may be as much as 50 years old. The jabiru carries food in its crop, sometimes over great distances, to feed its young. The nest contains 2 half-grown youngsters. Jabirus occur throughout Brazil, and the name jabiru means blown out with the wind. It is derived from an Amazonian Indian word and describes the bird's unusual neck. The parent regurgitates a whole fish, and the youngsters immediately fight for it. The jabirus are not the only occupants of this nest. These are monk parakeets, and they too live in the nest. This bird is preparing the lining for its breeding quarters by stripping the leaves off twigs which it has collected. As many as 20 pairs of monk parakeets can live within a jabiru nest. The flood has dried completely, and the Pantanal, which 6 months ago resembled an inland sea, is now once again a prairie. The ants return to the savannah to colonize the dry soil. Once again, the giant anteater roams the savannah, searching for food. When it discovers the ant's nest, it uses its powerful claws to rip the nest open. It pushes its snout into the opening and uses its long, sticky tongue to lap up the ants. The anteater has no jaws, and its nose and mouth are fused together to make a long, tubular snout. And now the coatis move back. They are omnivorous and travel in family groups over large distances when the Pantanal is flooded. They search the dry land for seeds and insects. As the coatis wander over the savannah, they call continuously to keep in contact with each other. An idyllic scene, but misleading. The Pantanal, having evolved over thousands of years, is now threatened. Cattle, which have coexisted with the wildlife for the past 150 years, have now become big business.